Hello and welcome to part one of following along with Unity's beginner code series. In this first video, we're going to explore the project we've been given before we do any mods. We'll take a look at variables and do the homework assignment that they've given us for the first week. And then we'll end the video with a quick look at functions and scope before next week diving really deep into that. So let's first just play the game they've given us here and see what we got. Okay, so it starts us off here with 3 health potions beside us. We can go ahead and pick those up. And we can see in our inventory, there they are, add 28% of health. And we can't take one because we don't have any health, or we're full health. So let's take care of that. Oh, okay, and we're down to 10 now. There we go. And each time we increment by 20%. Okay. So as you can see, it's a pretty nice looking scene we have here with some enemies in it. Nice looking buildings. And some loot barrels. So yeah, that's a nice start for an RPG game. Okay, let's take a look at the code here. All right, so we're first going to take a look at that the potion spawner that's beside us when we start. Let's take a look here at it, and we see if we scroll down, it uses the spawner sample script, and we can locate that by clicking on it, and it'll pop up right here for you. Let's double click that, open Visual Studio. Okay, so here we have our script. If you're new to coding, this is going to look like a bit much to you. So we'll start at the very beginning here. We have using Unity Engine. Now that's a namespace that we need to call in order to use certain functions here, like vector3 is in that namespace. And we also called in another namespace for the project itself, creator kit code. Okay. And then we have public class spawner sample. Now that's, you'll notice, is the same name as the file that we created, or well, that was already created for us. But if you would create a new file in Unity, it will automatically make a new class inside with that same name for the class as your file name, and automatically by default it will extend mono behavior. And we'll talk about that in a later video. Okay, and for now you just need to understand that this is the script for inside right here. Inside this class is the script we are inside. So we have a public game object, which is the object to spawn. Okay. And then inside a start function. Now this is what a function is, and we'll get into that later in the video. And inside a start function, you'll see on the line 10 here that we have an int angle equals 15. Well, that's what we call a variable. Okay. And the first keyword is int. That's the type of variable. In this instance, it would be an integer, a whole number. And then we have the name, which is called angle. And your name should always be something descriptive that tells you, what exactly is this value mean here? And we're saying, well, 15 means angle. Okay. When we're saying angle, we mean 15. And we could, if we wanted to, we could put a whole expression in here. Say if we wanted it to be 19, we could put 15 plus 4, now angle equals 19, because it evaluates this expression first and then passes it to this name that we can call later on. Okay, which you see is changed, and we can change it anytime we like. Okay, we'll keep it at 15 to start. Now you also see, if you look down here, you see a number 2. It pops up 3 different times. What does this number 2 mean? And nobody knows. So that's what we call a magic number. Okay, and we can get rid of that problem by calling a variable. A variable int, and we'll call it radius. So we want the name to be something that means what the number stands for, and this is the radius. Okay, so now we can take and copy that, paste it there. See, now that code starts to make a little bit more sense to us. The spawn position is the transform position plus direction times radius. We don't need to wonder what number 2 means. Okay, so we solved that problem with using a variable. Okay, so that's our introduction to variables. And we can dig a lot deeper into that as we go along with this video series. So let's look at the homework assignment they've given us. Our assignment is to take this script and modify it so that instead of spawning 3 potions, it spawns 4, and they should all be the same distance apart as far as the angle. Well, that looks pretty simple. I mean, you could see that these 3 lines is what spawns your potion. It happens 3 times, so we kind of, by a rule of thumb, figure out that, hey, yeah, this is probably what spawns it. So we have 3 spawns, and each time the angle is incremented by 40. Okay. Well, here's a possibility for a variable. Let's fix that magic number 55 and 95. Who knows why do we change those numbers? Well, let's make an int variable. We'll call it delta A to represent the change in angle, and we'll call it 40. Okay. So now the angle is not going to equal 55. It's going to equal the angle plus delta angle is what we're going to do here. And I'll show you a quick way to do that. We can do a plus equals delta angle, delta A. Okay, and what that does is it increments angle by delta A. It's the same as writing out angle equals angle plus delta A, but this is much simpler to read. So we can copy paste that. And you notice we're doing a lot of copy and paste, and we'll fix that later on in the next video. Okay, so that's a lot cleaner now too. And we don't need to wonder why is the number changing, what is it? Well, it's our change in angle, and it's 40 each time. Okay, so now it's a lot simpler. If you want to add a new spawn, well, all we got to do is copy, paste. We don't even need to change any values, and it'll automatically increment it 40 more degrees. So let's save that, and we'll take a look at our project here. Let it compile. Okay, let's play this once. So there, now we have our 4. Okay, but they're kind of close together. And since we had radius made as a variable, we no longer need to go down through each single one and change that to whatever we want. Let's make it a 5. So we'll make it a 5 and save it. And play it. And there we go. We've got our 4 with a nice radius around us. Okay. All right, digging back into this. Okay, so that solves the homework problem we were given. But as you can see here, we've literally copy and pasted the exact same thing 3 times. Okay, now we're going to solve that next week. Okay, but for now, I'm going to give you an introduction here. Okay, we can solve that with functions. Okay, and what a function is see, this start is a function. Okay, and the function is just something that can get called to evaluate an entire block of code. So every time that this start function gets called, which if you don't know is it gets called 1 time once the game is started. Okay, each time the game is started gets called once, and then it moves into the update function, which we can get into that later on too. But anyway, inside this function, we have all this code. And if this function ever got called more than once somewhere, it would evaluate this code each time the function was called. Okay, so what we could make our own function if we'd like to. We can make a function. Now we want it to be void, which means it doesn't return anything. Void means nothing, so we're returning nothing. Okay, but we want it to print hello. Okay, so we'll print hello. And we can hello. Okay, so there's that. Now we have this function print hello. And we can call that and we'll call it last. Why not? It doesn't really much matter. We'll put it here last, and we'll call that here print hello. And now when it evaluates this code, when it gets down to this line, it'll automatically see this and jump down into the function and evaluate any code that's inside the function, which we only have one line, print hello. See that in action here. We'll get our console up, or here, wait, we'll turn that off. Get our console up, and let's just play it one time. And there we go. Hello, it says. Okay, so there's functions. That's an introduction to functions. Now, while we're on it, we can look at scopes. Each of these has their own brackets, which contains their own code, and that is called scope. Okay, each one has its own scope. Okay, this code lies within the scope of the start function, and this code lies within the scope of the print hello function. So if we would have, say, a variable in here, okay, this function doesn't know that x exists. Okay, we can't call x here and say x equals 5. It doesn't even let us try. Yeah. We get the red squiggly line saying no, there is no x here. See, x only exists inside the scope of print hello, so we can't even call here. Okay, so there's scope. You got two different scopes inside of the scope of your public class, which has actually its own scope. Okay, and that's getting a little more advanced. You know, we don't need to start digging into the scopes of classes and namespaces just yet. But just to give you a quick introduction, the namespace is outside of the class. You have your namespace, my namespace. Okay. And we could put all this code inside of my namespace. Okay. And now this is another scope. Okay, this is an outer scope. And you see each pair of brackets you can just think of as a scope. Okay. So everything that we put in here also exists in everything below it. Okay, anything inside the class we can call inside the functions, but the functions themselves cannot access the inner, what we call local variables. Okay, these are local to this scope. X is local to print hello. Angle is local to start. Okay, so that's a pretty quick introduction to scopes and functions, which we'll dig much deeper into that next week. So with that, I will put this back to the way it belongs, save it, and hope to see you next week. Goodbye.